Disclaimer, this video concerns Avi Yemini yet again. So I've made a recent sort of a penance pact, is how I'll describe it, which I talked about on social media earlier in the week, because I feel obliged to correct the record on this little guy so often. I kind of feel bad for my regular ongoing viewers to have to hear this shit over and over. So on those weeks, this is my pact. I will also vow to release another video on some other random shit. It'll always be something dumb, I commit to that. This week it will be a comprehensive review of an anti-lockdown pedophile fantasist rap music video. So yeah, look out for that. But for those of you who enjoy this kind of thing, and I know there's a few of you, let's talk gnomes.
Can you see the smile on my face? Today I have had the biggest legal win of my life. And that's a big call because I'm in court so much.
After Avi Yemini was made to look like a complete tit by PR Guy 17 and Friendly Geordies over his failed court-enabled doxing campaign, he retreated into a little ditch for a couple of weeks to wait for his serotonin to return. Now he's back. And he's super excited about this big victory that he's had. It's a letter he's got from VicPol saying soz. He's super excited. He thinks that this letter is like a golden immunity medallion. And he even mentioned me. He dared to mention me in his video on the subject. So now I will respond to that. First, I'm going to discuss the history and the context behind the letter, and then after that, I'll get on to what he said in response to moi.
Victoria Police have finally put out the following apology. On January 26, 2020, at about 1:10 p.m, Mr. Yemini was arrested by members of Victoria Police while conducting numerous video interviews with pay the rent protesters and other members of the public. On September 5th, 2020, at about 12:40 p.m, Mr. Yemini was arrested by members of Victoria Police whilst conducting numerous video interviews and recording events. Mr. Yemini was detained for a short period of time after his arrest. On January 26, 2021, Mr. Yemini was detained by members of Victoria Police whilst conducting video interviews and recording events with protesters. On each occasion, Mr. Yemini was wrongfully arrested and detained by members of Victoria Police whilst reporting for Rebel News. Victoria Police sincerely apologises.
Why was Avi Yemini repeatedly getting carted away from rallies a few years ago? Because some of you don't know, but I was there for some of it, so I can tell you. These VicPol tactics date back to around 2017, 2018. And to situate you in that time, because you got to understand, things were different. Melbourne's grassroots activism landscape at that time, yeah, it looked a lot different to how it does now. For one, the racist, anti-immigration patriot movement was still going, although it was in a period of transition from 2017 because we were starting to see the end of the whole flag-caped patriot rally thing and the beginning of a genuine income stream for rock star racists like Molly Yiannopoulos, people who were busy turning nationalism into a paid touring circuit. The Melbourne left, meanwhile, were constantly on the street, you wouldn't be surprised to hear. And, besides the plethora of anti-fascist and anti-racist counters to those patriot movement rallies or increasingly private events, there were also plenty of refugee rights events, Indigenous rights rallies, environmentalist rallies, and so on and so forth. Basically, in Melbourne, people rally a lot. Among the patriot movement, a handful of figures were vying for the biggest slice of the attention pie for their own ends. And their own ends could be attention or clicks or clout or the promise of future money. Remember, it's 2017 at this stage, and being a far-right figurehead at that time was not yet lucrative back then, particularly not yet here in Australia. If any of these guys were getting money at that stage, they were probably exceptions to the norm, and it was probably because they were blessed with a financier. That leads me to two figures in particular, Avi Yemini and Neil Erickson. Here they are standing together at a Make Victoria Safe Again rally that Avi put on in, I think, 2017. These were both guys who made videos, craved attention and put on stunts. they had for a little while both enjoyed a bit of financier attention. I think Neil got some love from a guy called Dan Spiller for a while for his video work, and Avi was being courted at that time by one Debbie Robinson of the Australian Liberty Alliance, who Avi once staged a failed political campaign running for a few years ago in a Victorian state election. Neil and Avi quickly fell out because Avi Yemini is a racist Jew, while Neil Erikson is a racist neo-Nazi, and that is not a combo destined to last. But nonetheless, for a time, they were essentially doing the same thing, that is, crashing left rallies to do stunts or get footage. Now, Neil was more aggressive and confrontational about it than Avi.
There wasn't enough accommodation to fit all of these refugees. They just left a busload of refugees on the side of...
They're all rapists! Don't let them in! Don't let them in! They're
But Avi was just then starting out with his kind of dumb, heavily edited vox pop angle.
Why aren't you hanging out with your Nazi mate over there?
We're just not doing that at the moment.
You don't need to apply for a permit to hold a political rally in Melbourne, unlike, say, in Sydney. And once you do, it becomes the police's job to ensure that that rally is peaceful. I mean, sometimes in practice it's their job to intimidate that rally or to brutalise its people as well, but I digress. VicPol identified that there were two notable figures who were in practice making many left rallies less peaceful, more provocative, and they wanted to keep them away. So VicPol kicked off what was immediately apparent to me on the sidelines, or as an active sort of anti-racist activist at that time, as a kind of a provisional strategy for those two people. What they started doing, and they did this with Neil and Avi, was they'd issue them with a warning and then escort them out, sometimes, like really physically, out of the boundaries of the rally, and then they'd tell them that if they come back, they'd be arrested with breach of the peace. It was always that one charge, breach of the peace.
Okay, move on. Well, we're going to move you down here, mate. It's that simple.
Huh?
What do you want to do? We're going to move you down
I have
here.
a legal right to film here.
You're moving down there.
I have a legal right to film here. What do you get about that?
Let's go.
I have a legal right to film here.
Move on down here. You're not filming here. Move.
Under what law am I not filming
You're
here?
moving. Let's go.
Under what law?
I'm telling you,
Under
you're
what
breaching the move
law?
on. You're breaching the peace. You're causing
I'm not
issues.
moving anywhere because
Move.
I'm
Let's
filming
go.
this protest.
Section 6 of the
Hey.
Summary Offences Act.
Let's go, mate.
Be clear on this. Neil and Avi are the only two people who ever consistently received that particular treatment in all of Victoria, that I saw anyway. That should show you how much of an outlay of these people and their behaviour actually was, and that this is not some kind of broad strategy or slippery slope. You don't need me to tell you that VicPol do a lot of fucked heavy-handed shit. Hell yeah. And, I'll be the first to talk about it. But honestly, I've got to say, this is not one of those things. This is a purposefully light touch strategy to try and gently diffuse the tensions that these camera-wielding far-right pests, with big Facebook pages or whatever, were causing. It's sort of cognizant of the fact that they had the cameras and they were going to upload everything. We'd all be lucky, to be honest with you, if we had as light touch an approach as that by the VicPol thugs, to be honest. I don't suppose this approach was based upon the strongest legal bedrock, right? I guess we're seeing that now. But look, you've got to understand, back in 2017, coppers probably thought it didn't matter about getting the fine print right with the likes of Avi or Neil, because these people were very different back then. Avi was very different back then. They were fringe scumbags, They weren't well-moneyed or resourced. But while Neil eventually stopped the stunts shit altogether, Avi went on through his temerity and persistence to see increasing success, and the problem with this strategy of VicPol's was that it kept being applied to Avi in the same way, even though he was rapidly accumulating clout and money through, TR News and later Rebel. By the time he was with Rebel, he was, of course, kitted out with the resources of one of the most litigious, far-right, hyper-partisan entertainment outlets that shouldn't be called news on the planet, headed up by Ezra Levant, who basically sues anything that moves. So this VicPol strategy was not built to last against someone who suddenly has enough resources to waste all your fucking time and make your life hell in court. We've already discussed on this channel how Yemini and Rebel will gladly pursue frivolous cases because the fundraising exceeds the cost of the action. Avi did that here, you know, for a couple of years. He made a song and a dance. And now he has received this letter. The letter itself, it is oddly worded. It says he was arrested on the 26th of January 2020 and then arrested on the 5th of September 2020 and then only detained on the 26th of January 2021. But then it goes on to say that on each occasion, Yemini was wrongfully arrested and detained by VicPol. This is of interest to me because I know that Yemini wasn't arrested on the 26th of January 2021. Remember, I myself poured over that day with a fine fucking tooth comb because that was the day where Yemini recorded himself sitting in the police van, lying through his fucking teeth saying, please donate to Rebel News to free me, even though he was just being escorted up the road. He wasn't arrested at all. Remember how I even demonstrated at the time that they set that donation bag up hours before the rally even happened. Why did this letter say that he was detained but then also arrested and detained at once? Which one, you know? Personally, I think, if I could hazard a guess, that it's because the letter was written by cops, and cops' primary experience with the written word is reading the Fred Bassett strip upside down while eating donuts. They probably just farted this letter out to avoid further court time with Yemini. You know, get rid of the cunt. Makes sense, right? So what do I think about the fact that he has received that letter? Mate, I am ambivalent, to be honest with you. Okay. I mean, in a way, I have to say good on him for getting it. Do you know what I mean? If only all the people in this country had the money and the resources to keep Australian coppers accountable for doing whatever the fuck they want to deal with problems as they see them. I'd like to see that kind of accountability for Kumanjayi Walker's family, for example. But on the whole, yeah, I do. I feel ambivalent. I mean, we all know that the only reason he ever did all this shit was for the fundraising, so let's not grandstand about the consequences for democracy or justice here too righteously, you know? It's not like anything bad ever really happened to him. You know what I mean? My heart doesn't bleed for him too much. What, do you get pushed over once? Bloody hell, you know? He goes out seeking trouble for money. It's not necessarily a travesty for me if he occasionally finds it, you know, in exchange for heaps of money. Like, get over it. As I say, I am ambivalent. But then he mentioned me in his video, and he included an old clip of me explaining, as I was, my strategy, or the landscape in ejecting pests like Avi, not just him, like him, from rallies. Here's the clip.
I'm stoked we finally settled this case and I can get back to doing what I do best. And for some like this hero who had figured out how to get police to drag me away from reporting their anti-fascist action, well, your tactics are now officially dead.
We worked with spotters to find him pretty early on. We all surrounded him. That's what they always do with Avi, just to clarify. They put him in a van and they take him off a few blocks away, and then they let him out and they tell him to bugger off, or if he comes back, they'll charge him with breaching the peace. Avi knows the drill. It always happens to him.
Awkward. Sorry to break up your little party, mate. It's never going to happen again. And next time you and your little spotters come trying to intimidate me, expect police to do their actual jobs and take down those who are getting violent, the criminals, not the victim.
I know we said that we expected VicPol to intervene, in that clip. I know I said that because, obviously, as I said earlier, I could see their strategy with the Avi types. I could perceive that there was a strategy going on here, and I planned accordingly. But Avi Yemini knows that we don't need cops around to deal with him. What a lot of you newbies might not necessarily realise is that back in like 2017, 2019, I and my comrades of Yard, that's yelling at racist dogs, were a great and persistent thorn in the side of people like Avi Yemini. As a left activist, I specialised for years in booting camera-wielding alt-right pests out of rallies. You know, I'm not just a fucking YouTuber. I have a history here, guys. Come on. I have a whole how-to video on how to do this non-violently and painlessly. And, you know, that subject matter doesn't come from a book I read for a video. It comes from experience. This is a subject matter expertise of mine. I am useful for something. We ruined so many of Avi's old videos that he used to have little meltdowns about it in public quite regularly. It was actually really only the pandemic that put the brakes on that era, in fact. And Avi was delighted about that because Avi suddenly got to go to all these fucking freedom rallies and suddenly he was assured that we were guaranteed to not be there for once, ruining his footage for him. So he had the time of his life and he made lots of money. Let me highlight just one Avi run-in, of me, mind you, that shows you what happens when the cops aren't around to stand between Avi Yemini and us. Now, spoiler alert, it doesn't involve him getting hurt, and spoiler alert, it certainly doesn't involve us running to the police. It was the school strike for climate, and this is in 2019. It was fucking rammed. It was huge. It had about more than 100,000 people at it, and myself and a few comrades, a few yardies, as we called ourselves back then, were out and about doing what we'd regularly do back then, that is looking around for Avi because he was always around, you know, buzzing at the edges of the rally trying to, you know, record people and trip them up. A couple of extremely capable yardies got to go and say hi to him. They approached him and they started asking him about his history of domestic violence.
And you're a convicted wife basher. Wife basher with the Nazis.
You have to understand, our game was eliminating Avi's footage by forcing things into the conversation that he would generally never allow into his own videos. And he's really tenacious and he's always got to have his content, and his idiot followers eat any old shit up. So he would still just edit like Swiss cheese around the moments where his domestic violence was mentioned. But nonetheless, you know, he would definitely lose footage if we talked about that stuff. So that was the tactic. So he found himself a bit kettled by two people talking about this ad nauseum, and he got very angry at my comrades. He tried to shape up to them at one point.
You'll make me. Come on. You'll make me. Come on, bro.
He would never hit anyone and ruin his own little career, would he? Then we'd have to fundraise, you know? Then he tried to run away from my comrades so he could get back to what he was actually doing that day. What he was doing was harassing children, I kid you not, for gotcha footage by kind of trying to trip them up about climate change.
Good day off school. Good day off school. Day of school. Day of school. Enjoying your day off school. Yeah.
So my comrades didn't let him go. They just followed him. That made him even more angry, and he threatened to dox one of them. He told him he'd find out his name and address or whatever.
What's your name? I'm not telling you my name. Find him.
We all know how much Avi Yemini loves doxing people, don't we? They kept following him, still just asking him, you know, harmless questions, to be honest. And then Avi Yemini completely threw a pink fit, and he ran to the Victorian police. Wait for it. And he demanded that they arrest my mates for stalking. Do you see how fucking rich this is? This cunt comes to a rally to approach randoms and ask them antagonistic questions. And then when we approach him at a rally to ask him antagonistic questions, he defines that as stalking and he wants everyone to go to jail. This is a man who has for years had a minimum of 2 AVOs out against him at all times. As far as I'm aware, he has at least one active AVO out against him right now, probably more, and he is having a fucking meltdown because he's being asked stuff. Isn't that amazing? Anyway, VicPol, they didn't do his bidding for him, and they basically just told everyone to leave each other alone, which my comrades were happy to do. But then another mate of mine was in a 7-Eleven across the road just a few minutes later, and they realised that Avi happened to be in there, like in the queue for the cashier, and they overheard him fucking huffing and moaning about how the cops wouldn't arrest these fucking lefties for stalking. Like, he was visibly upset about it. He genuinely thought they should all be arrested. Do you know, the next time that Avi came out to a left rally after that, the very next time, he went to a climate rally and he literally, I swear this is true, brought 10 Proud Boys out with him as defensive security, specifically to protect him from being asked questions about his history of domestic violence. This isn't an isolated incident. I swear, it's not. Like, it's just the funniest one, you know, and the most recorded. Unfortunately, we had too many of these things that didn't get recorded enough. You know, we don't have a tag-along team of people with cameras like you know, Rebel or Yemini does. I remember once coming up to an intersection with my mates, and we spotted Avi Yemini and his cameraman, and as soon as they saw us, they did a 180 and they like darted down the street to try and get around the other side of the block to hit the other end of the rally for footage, you see, just so they wouldn't have to deal with us and our terrifying questions. I've seen all of this stuff with my own eyes so many times. That's the real Avi. That's the Avi I know, and I wish you knew him a little more, you know, complete and utter sook. So I want you to listen to this bit that he said earlier again. It'll mean something a little different to you now.
And next time you and your little spotters come trying to intimidate me, expect police to do their actual jobs. This apology is more valuable than any payout. It's a guarantee from police to stop taking the easy road.
Now you know what he's actually saying. He's not saying, oh, bring it on, now you have to deal with me, lefties. No, he's actually saying, now I have my golden immunity ticket letter from the police, so now I can get them to arrest you for stalking. But I'm not a stalker, Avi. I'm not the one here with the multiple AVOs out against me. That's you, mate. All we've ever done to you is the same thing you do to left rallies, you know? I've never hurt you either, nor have my comrades. In fact, I promise we always do everything in our power to keep you safe, little man. You know, I wouldn't want you to have to run another fundraising campaign just because someone lays a finger on you, would I? I actually really look forward to seeing you on the streets again soon. It's been a while, you know. I know I often miss you, probably because you need me to not be there in order to film, but I promise I'll always be on the lookout for you when I'm in Melbourne, and I promise to make sure that we're recording everything this time, so that if you edit it all like Swiss cheese, it doesn't matter. All right, mate? All right, mate. Patreon.com/Tom Tenneke. Would love your support. Thank you, everyone.